Good morning, coaches. It is my great pleasure to introduce our section presenter, Simon Goodey from London Dog Trust. He has been a member of the Para Rowing Commission since 2006 and has been working with the World Rowing Development Team to produce Para Rowing Coaches Education modules. He will present an update on the new material to develop and support coaches. Please join me to welcome Simon.
We are going to look at the World Rowing Coach Development Program and the Introduction to Para Rowing Level 1 course. This is the Learn to Row booklet, which is available on the World Rowing website. We're seeing that the contents now very much embed Para rowing with the contents of classic rowing. Example we can see here is getting in and out of a boat. There is a different process for ambulant athletes compared to athletes that are wheelchair users, typically in the fixed seat boats, PR1 and PR2 sport class. On the right, we can see a sequential safe method of transferring an athlete into a PR1 boat. Capsize drill, there are modifications for para rowers, particularly those in the PR1 boats who may be strapped, certainly at the trunk, may have additional strapping on their legs, feet, and possibly hands. This also links to a video through the booklet where you can see a capsize and recovery drill for both classic rowers and para rowers. Rowing when it's hot and when it's cold, there are some greater considerations for some para rowers who may have health conditions where they have a greater predisposition to hypothermia or hypothermia. And we look to discuss that in the level 1 course. Warming up and warming down. Again, we are looking to include rowers who may be wheelchair users. It's very much about inclusion, being able to include rowers who may be wheelchair users into a club, and they can take part in a combined warming up, stretching routine with other athletes. Technique, we look at, for PR3 athletes, we have the World Rowing Avatar, which suits us very nicely. And here we can see some examples for the fixed seat boats, PR1 and the PR2 sport class. This is a selection of some of the para rowing modules which are lodged in iSpring, and they are available to our para rowing coach educators. We talk a little bit about the history of para rowing, and we get to learn through delivering these courses how para rowing started in various countries. Some examples here of soldiers who were wounded during the First World War. And on the left, we have the Bayardo Regatta, one of the largest regattas that started in the 1980s. Photograph on the left shows injured soldier during the First World War being taught to row on a lake in Regent's Park in central London. Photograph on the right is taken 90 years later. The Italian LTA Cox 4 winning a gold medal in Beijing, And I will note they were coached by Paolo Grizzetti, who is now chair of the Power Rowing Commission. So, earliest records we have, George Clifford Brown, who was a progressive headmaster at Worcester College for the Blind. He introduced rowing for his pupils so they could compete, as he saw it, on a fair and equitable basis with other schools of that time. And indeed, the schools went on to compete at Henley Royal Regatta and other national competitions. Sir Arthur Pearson was a newspaper proprietor who set up a hostel for blinded soldiers during the First World War, taught them various trades and helped with their reintegration back into society. And part of this included their recreation and offering them rowing opportunities. We mentioned the 1948 Stoke Mandeville Games. Really, that's simply to show that rowing and meaningful competition in rowing predated the Stoke Mandeville Games. Also, the Paralympic Games, the first that were held in 1960 in Rome. Philadelphia Rowing Program, which we've just spoken about, the Bayard Regatta. We look at the timeline and the pathway through to rowing being accepted as a Paralympic sport. This included a number of seminars, formation of the Adaptive Rowing Commission, and a number of federations signing up to the Seville Protocol in 2002. Finally, we get through to our inaugural appearance at the Beijing Paralympic Games in 2008. Classification, we believe all coaches should understand some basics around classification, because this very much underpins our sport. We talk a little bit about Dr. Ludwig Gutmann and the Stoke Mandeville Games, a far more simplistic system in place for allowing athletes to compete. Then we look at how the sports, all Paralympic sports, move towards a functional model where athletes were assessed based on their ability and not on their clinical disability or their diagnosis. Dr. Michael Riding, who was a member of the then Adaptive Commission, former Chief Medical Officer for the International Paralympic Committee, set up establishing sport classes for our adaptive rowing competition. Gender equality was very much part of that, where we see the Olympic sport now addressing equality in competition for the Tokyo Olympic Games. We have crew boats, which are all 50-50 gender, and then a male and female single. So we get to understand the sport classes, the classification personnel involved, the prerequisites for classification, the classification process. We look at eligible and non-eligible health conditions, remembering that not all health conditions, disabilities, diagnoses will be eligible for para rowing. Protests, intentional misrepresentation, and finally, the World Rowing Athlete Classification Code, which we need to ensure that all federations are compliant with. People first language. We have a short informational session. We look at labels that stereotype individuals with a disability, some negative examples, and the people first examples, which we want to see used globally. And all this really does is ensure that there is a respectful interaction between the athlete and coach. Below you can see some negative examples, and on the right, people first language, so a preferred choice. And if we think of a disabled rowing club or a disabled boat, that isn't good to anyone. So we use alternatives. Access and inclusive rowing provision. We look at access through inclusion, club administration, involving athletes with a disability in the club. Access audits, we go through a very comprehensive audit to the rowing environment with a sequential journey, arriving at a venue, access to the boathouse, to the water, to the club room, and there is a self-audit which all federations should be able to carry out. Establishing a power rowing program unique to every continent in the world. We look at the barriers to participation, perceived or otherwise. A development plan and strategy, and we can help federations establish those. An understanding of whether a power rowing program for a federation is more closely aligned with their national rowing federation or in many instances their national Paralympic committee. Identifying local, national, strategic partners, benefits to a national federation. Inclusion, we talk a lot about inclusion, getting grants to enable modifications to a rowing venue, and of course equipment. Benefits to the individual are numerous, and we look at the physical and psychosocial benefits. And then go on to talk about the FISA Power Rowing Global Outreach Program and the importance of that program, ensuring that rowing maintains its presence in the Paralympic Games. Capsize and recovery drill. There is a methodical process for carrying this out. Enable clubs to understand why we do this process, so aims, objectives, and the outcomes. Various equipment checks that need to be carried out prior to the actual capsize. We talk about personal flotation devices, both for the athlete and the coach. And this is the coach who may need to enter the water to effect a rescue, what is the most desirable PFD for coach and athlete. We go through a video and audio shoot sequence, a recommended sequence with a narration and a transcript of that process. Pre-medical screening and examples of a controlled capsize drill in the swimming pool, which is courtesy of British Rowing. And this is really relevant for not only athletes and coaches, but also for umpires, safety marshals, and safety boat teams. Cold water immersion, hypothermia. We talk about the safe and expedient removal of athletes who've entered the water and maybe at a greater predisposition of developing hypothermia when compared to an able-bodied athlete. We talk about rescue safety boats and what is the ideal and how equipment can be modified together with the type of equipment that should be carried out in a rescue boat. We enable everyone to understand the para-rowing boat classes that are used in FISA competition and the regulations around that. So an overview of PR1, PR2, PR3 para rowers, boats, pontoons, strapping, type of strapping, looking at that from safety. Safety is very much a theme throughout the course. Seat cushions and soft tissue protection, and how all of this relates to the equipment regulations. Rigging considerations, very important for para rowing. We start with a video that is now 15 years old from the World Rowing Championships in Gifu, Japan in 2005. And we ask participants to identify some of the obvious deficiencies in the rig, and we then look at some video from recent World Rowing competition where we can see a stark difference. So para rowing rigging considerations by sport class, we look at the stroke arcs, what we can achieve, how the fixed seat stroke arcs can measure it, or as near as possibly to sliding seat arcs. So we look at a number of theoretical stroke arc scenarios, changing various parameters on the boat, current trends we see in rigging, and a rigging table or example of some rigging tables. Para rowing coaching considerations. We emphasize that there are greater similarities than there are differences for both para rowing and classic athletes. Greater similarities than differences. Within the health conditions, we look at the secondary health conditions within diagnostic groups, where spasms, skin protection, thermoregulation are applicable to athletes who may present with spinal cord injury, cerebral palsy, neurological conditions, and athletes with amputations. We look at our pre-activity health screening, which we take from our classification. And really the considerations around coaching athletes in general with physical and visual impairments. Safe and methodical transfer of athletes from wheelchair to the ergometer, from wheelchair to pontoon to the boat, and a guideline for the various diagnostic groups again. Thermoregulation we've talked about, and we look at this again in training and how this can be managed for athletes that may be predisposed to developing these conditions. And not forgetting the importance of exercise, offsetting some of the secondary health complications such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, overuse injuries, particularly for athletes who may be wheelchair users, osteoporosis, and the psychosocial benefits of exercise for someone with a disability. Thank you, and I look forward to speaking to you later and answering any questions you may have.
So, dear coaches, first of all, I would like to briefly introduce myself. I'm Paola Grizzetti. I'm a coach both for competitive rowing and para-rowing, and I am the new chair of the Para-Rowing Commission. I'm glad to introduce the para-coaches invited to share with all of you their experience. Esteban is from Argentina, while Oleksandr and Sergey from Ukraine. We know each other since very long time, and let me say that they work daily with the same goals: promote, develop, and achieve great results with this group of athletes. I wish you a very good conference. So I will start with you, Esteban, with the first question, and I would like to know, can you tell us how is para-rowing organized in your country?
Okay, well, in the first point, thank you very much for the invitation in the name of all my country and my working team. It's an honor to be here. Well, in our country, the para-rowing started many years ago, but fortunately, this is the third cycle that we have the economical support of two different entities to make our job in much better thing every time. In the first point, we have the support of the National Federation, Argentinian Rowing Federation, and we are in fluid contact with the Paralympic Committee of Argentina. That because our sport take part on the program of the Paralympic sport for Tokyo, and I tell you is we have two different entities: National Secretary of Sport of Argentina, who give us the economical support for the development in all the country, and in the other hand, we have an entity of high performance who attend exclusive this point. And inside the National Federation, we have different working teams. I am the head coach of the para-rowing working team with 3 coaches. This year, we incorporate a female coach because we want to have a very much longer and balanced team to work. And the regattas, during the national calendar of regattas, we have in every regatta during the year, we have regattas of para-rowing of the specialty.
Very good. So what about Ukraine? So how is para-rowing organized in your country?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Paula. It's a big honor for us to be invited to such a high-level conference. And I try to be brief. It's quite difficult, but talking about para-rowing in Ukraine, we need to look back a little bit to the history and to tell in short how is organized para-rowing. I need to tell how is organized in general Paralympic sports in Ukraine. So National Paralympic Committee of Ukraine is the governing body for all Paralympic sports in Ukraine. In Ukraine, this organization is called National Sports Committee for the Disabled of Ukraine. Why it is called so? Because it combines 2 movements: Paralympic movement in Ukraine and Deaflympic movement also in Ukraine. And this organization is serves like an NGO. It's a public union, and it was created in 1992, many years ago. And the core values of the organization is promotion of integration of people with disabilities to social life by means of physical culture and sports. And also the penultimate goal for organization is a top-level performance of our athletes at Paralympic Games. Actually, this committee is a combination of 4 federations. I like to try to share my screen just to show a little bit how it is working. Okay. So it's there are 4 federations. There are Ukrainian Federation for persons with locomotor disabilities, Ukrainian Deaf Sports Federation, Ukrainian Blind Sports Federation, and Ukrainian Sports Federation for persons with intellectual impairments. It goes as a governing body, but we need also to mention how the system works inside the country. There is a created state system. It is called Ukraine Center for Physical Culture and Sports for People with Disabilities in Sport. And it has its centers in each region of Ukraine. So we have 25 regional centers in sport. We have also 2 city centers, and there is also a number of schools for children and youth with disabilities. Also, there are more than 103 clubs of physical culture and rehabilitation for children with disabilities. And coming back to history of para-rowing in Ukraine, it has started actually from the moment when para-rowing, at that time it was adaptive rowing, was included to Paralympic Games program. It happened in 2005, and we had the first events during Beijing 2008 Paralympic Games. So it's actually the system that goes behind para-rowing in Ukraine, and para-rowing as a sport in Ukraine is governed by the National Paralympic Committee of Ukraine.
So, Oleksandr, based on what you show us about your organization, I will go to a second question with you. And with this organization, how do you identify the new athletes for para-rowing?
Well, for identification of new para-rowers, it's quite a difficult question, because since the year of start of development of para-rowing in Ukraine, it started in 2005. These approaches for identifying new athletes, these approaches and ways to identify them, they have changed already several times, because there are few approaches that can be used in past, they cannot be used today, for example. As example, I can name the first one, consideration that has been used before London 2012 Paralympic Games. We had a consideration that some former rowers, like veteran rowers or rowers those finished their sport career, they can be identified as a potential para-rowers. But it was quite difficult, because it required a very deep search. It required a very strict classification approach, and those rowers, they probably would have a minimal impairment. They may have got some injury due to accident, and all these rowers, they came like from able-bodied sport of any level. Such approach was used at that time, but it was not for a long time and strategic perspective. It can be used only for short perspective, and you can make this search, but anyway, you cannot use it as a main approach, because nowadays competitive para-rowing is developing. We can see a very great pace of races, and results are improving all the time, and we have a change from 1,000 to 2,000 meters, and all the assets become more professional. So it provides us with the opportunity to try to make identification starting from the systems that I told before. There are regional centers in each region of Ukraine, and there are young people coming to these centers, to the sports schools, and there is a initial selection of these candidates. And then at some point of time during the common training camp, they make a selection with the coaches. And these proposals can be happen at any time, but by any region of Ukraine. Also, what happened to Ukraine and to former Paralympic Games medalists and champions. We can have an example. When an athletes, they have contacts between each other at some training center or during common training camp. And athletes, for example, from cross-country skiing, they can try sport of para-rowing. Why it happens? Because in some Paralympic sports, the athlete reaches some level and then he cannot make the medal place. And he wants to try his efforts at other sports. For example, we had recently like a ergometers race at one of the winter centers, at our winter center in Ukraine. And there were many cross-country skiers with impairment, and they wanted to try their efforts in para-rowing. So it's actually one of the ways that new rowers and new potential candidates to the team may be identified. Also, it is very important for athletes to have direct communication between each other, and they often share their inspiration, their thoughts about the sport, and it is especially attractive when a para-rower describes the sport of para-rowing and shows his good well-being and good health condition due to rowing. And it is a very good example when one athlete can tell another athlete what are the advantages of the sport. And also it is important to use social media channels and social networks. For example, we had an announcement on our National Paralympic Committee Facebook page, and it was an announcement about new selection for the para-rowing team. And there are quite many views of the page. And we had about, I think about 10 direct contacts with the team from young people, those who want to try their efforts in para-rowing. And summarizing all the things that I mentioned, we can remember our athletes from Beijing, like Oleksandr who won silver. He was a swimmer before coming to rowing. Then you may remember Alla Lysenko. She won gold medal in London 2012. She was in sitting volleyball. And then we have also Roman Polanski, who's a Paralympic champion in 2016. He tried his efforts in the sport of para-canoe. So this approach of trying the sport and see advantages of the sport is very actually useful for us.
Very good. So let's hear what the experience from Esteban. So how do you identify your country athletes to involve in para-rowing?
Yes, well, in a first point, the same that Oleksandr say about the importance of the social media. You know, at the moment is a very important tool has the possibility to give our information and looking for in all our country different potential para-rowers. You know, our country here in South America, Argentina is a very, very long, we have a very long distance, and we have the fortune of have very different conditions of water sport and different climates. And some clubs in Argentina practice in a very big rivers, Jucambacks, from the north, from Brazil or Paraguay, very strong, very powerful rivers. In another side, we have in the south, in Patagonia, near Chile, some places with a lake with a very calm water, but to different climate conditions. And this is a good situation, but also it's a very big challenge for us to take in contact with all, because not all the time we can make a national camp to stay all together. And for that, we try to do this plan. We made a different training camps in different parts of the country. All of this job is by my coordination, because we have inside our working team of para-rowing 2 different departments. One is of development exclusive, and the other is for high performance, and where we only work with the national team. But we have connection because we need, in this point, we take a very fluid contact. And when we made the training camp, in this case, it's for the new athletes, but many times we made a mixed camp with the experienced athletes of the national team and with the athletes, new or potential para-rowers. For us, all starts in the club, and it's very important the contact with the clubs and with the coaches. When we receive some question about any club in the country, where the first what we want to do is to have a personal contact. Well, now in this moment with the COVID, it's impossible. We use these tools on the online checkpoint, but we hope near future we can return to the clubs and take a meeting with the authorities of the club, with the coaches, to see the club, the condition of the club, the material, the boats, the blades, and then we give a report from them and try to have a meeting with the potential athletes. And we also have a very fluid contact with some hospitals and some institution of rehabilitation, because there starts the rehabilitation of the potential para-rower. And we think it's a first step before the club includes. And we stay many times, 1 or 2 times during the year. We have some meeting and we go with another sports, especially with para-canoeing. We have a very good relationship. We use the same venue and the same place for work, and have a very similar philosophy about our jobs. And we made together a meeting and present our activity for the patients in these institutions. And we hope in many times they return, and we receive some question. One of them came back after he finished the rehabilitation.
So very good. I stay with you, Esteban, because you said that sometimes when you organize a training camp, you put together the new, let's say, the novices in para-rowing together with the most experienced athletes that you have. So how do you integrate the new talent into this existing group, para group?
Okay.
How do you
yes, excuse me.
Yeah. So how do you integrate this, say, new talented athletes into this existing team, para team?
Okay, there's a connection, there's a bridge with your second question, because exclusive in the training camp, we have exclusive training camp for the national team for high performances, and then from the beginning para rowers. When we have a new talent, we talk. We have a meeting, the development department and then the high performance department, and we decide one of the coaches in the future be a mentor, like a coach mentor for the coach of the new athletes, and we try to start working together. In a first point, we give us the planification, the training, try to make some mixed training without we respect the original planification of the coach, but we try to make some suggestion to in the future we have the same philosophy and the same style, you know. And after that, we invite to the coach and to the athlete to a camp of high performance and made probably not the same volume, not the same kilometers, but they working together. For example, the new athlete sometimes is like a sparring, you know, like a B-boat and like a sparring, and we made some work together. The coach stayed with us in the motorboat, and we have after that our technical sessions and see the video with the athletes. And we think in this way we can make what we call something like a culture of organization, of national organization, and try to have we respect the styles of the different clubs, of the different boat house, but we try to at the end of the way we have the same language for all the team, because at the end of the way we try to make much bigger our national team. This is and excuse me, Paula, and also when we have a test, we invite to share with us the results and to stay in contact, online contact, and not only the personal contact during the training camp, also without also with this technology, and we share the different calendar of tests.
Very good. So how is for you, Oleksandr, instead? So how do you integrate new talented athletes into their group?
Thank you, Paula. Let's give a floor, please, to Sergey. It seems it's more coaching questions.
Okay.
NPC or team manager. Thank you.
Good. So Oleksandr, Sergey, it's for you now.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you for inviting me here. From the point of view of coaches, the organization of training process is a key factor in integration of athletes into an exciting program. The years approaches to integration have changed over 15 years. There has been change of 2-3 generations. Other athletes are being replaced by younger people who perceive new information and seek to learn new things for more experienced qualities. Integration involves not only the donating of skills for physical adaptation of training process, but also elements such as learning independence in every life situation as well as in household. Motivation component. New athletes by way of examples of experienced athletes and their approaches to training as competitions learn to unleash their potential and show the best abilities. Socialization and psychological adaptation. The new athletes has a sense of teamwork, team support, and sense of belonging to the country's high representation at the international level. Many athletes revolve themselves emotionally. For example, an athlete from upcountry in a rural area has a limited range of communication and doesn't reveal in communication. After some period of time, their preparation becomes more communicative, has a wide range of friends in the team, and important role in this process is played by coach, who helps to reveal the best qualities of the new athlete, from everyday communication to discussing more general issues. In addition, the coach mentor understands not only the personal sports approach, but also the importance of personal contact, understanding of domestic and life challenges of the athlete. Today we have a reserve. It's created 6-8 people, and the main team with 10-12 people That's inside the team.
Wow, very good. So let's go back, Esteban, to you again. So what are your strategies for balancing para crews in terms of sport class, impairment, gender, etc.?
Okay. Yes, it's a very interesting point that because many times we have a same situation. We don't have in all the regattas during the calendar that I tell you at the first of the interview, that we don't have all the clubs present together in the regattas. And in that cases, originally we made the test. And for example, we have only one competition, and they made his regatta alone. But then we changed this possibility. We try to give much importance to the situation, the competition situation, and we talk and we receive an idea of another coaches of para swimming who made in his challenge, in his tournament, he made a handicap system, and we start to use this system. For example, we have a different gender or different categories, Pier 1, Pier 2, Pier 2 especially, and we made in the same, only one regatta, but with different categories. We're using a timetable, and with the handicaps, we have the possibility at the end of the regatta to have a much interesting competitive situation. It's much better for the rowers, especially. Much better for the people who stay in the venue, seeing the regatta. And during the time we use the system, we see that it's much better for the times, especially for the times. They're just a little much better during this system. And we also have a situation with the Pier 3 category. Then we try to make a system, a mixed system. In the case of Pier 3, it's the category in Argentina. We have the last two cycles, Rio and Tokyo. We have much para rowers, active para rowers, but especially men, not so much women's. But we have, it's a category inside the para row in Argentina that we have much people. But also they know the times of the other crews. They know because so much of them stay together during the training camps and during the different regattas. And for that, we received a suggestion for a master rower who take part of the National Federation and take that, analyze the possibility to make the regatta of Pier 3 inside the master regatta. And we do that, and what's good, because was again a new situation, a much competitive situation, because our rowers don't know there's a lot of masters in Argentina to practice and compete every time. And for our rowers, it's a very new situation, very new rivals, and also the same situation. We can have much better results of our rowers, and also be not only sport positive results, also humanity situation. Integrate. They work together. In some cases, we have some para rowers who was friends when he was young, and he meets again with some of his partner of rivals on the past. And we also now we are working about the female category to try to give some extra impulse, because we are trying to modify the para rowing regatta in our national calendar, give the same points than the classical rowers, and it's a good situation in my opinion, because it's the importance of the para rowing. But now we are working in a project to try to give the regattas with a mixed crew or with a female crew extra point, and maybe this is an extra motivation for the clubs, because there are some clubs who say very, very strong challenge during the year for the national club champion. And this is the basic strategy we use.
Good. And now he's in Ukraine. So what are strategies, or Sergey or Oleksandr, I don't know, but what are your strategies?
I take this question. In this case, we have priorities given to crews, in this case, classes that are included to the Paralympic Games official program. The goal is to balance the crews so that each athlete has a replacement option, reserve option. This is no definite plan for the selection of the athlete with a certain class instead. There is a constant search for new athletes who will be able to become competitive with the main team in the future. More problematic issue is that search of female athletes, a reserve of male rowers is wider. The dissemination of information by the athletes themselves and the achieved search by coaching staff and doctors play a huge role here. Sometimes it happens that the real replacement of the athlete has to be urgent, for example, due to health problem. Then there appears a gap and problems in certain class of boat. Also among female athletes sometimes have to look for a replacement for a long period of time due to pregnancy. It is difficult to interest women by rowing because of the idea that rowing is too hard for execute. It is a difficult sport, etc. For them. But we change our attitude through a variety of exercises, the annual cycle. We do CrossFit, ski training on West Center in Ukraine, swimming, running, cycling, various ergometers, try to share. And adjustment of boat for athletes is another strategy for balancing crews, is that what constantly carried out, especially after the team is updated. It is extremely important that the features of the rowing technique, due to specific of importance, do not interfere with other in the boat. Sometimes it's necessary to divide from strategies of setting up boat for a particular crew with the locomotor impairment. Thus, this boat becomes unique and a team of technical adjustment. Sometimes we have training in single sculls, in single boats or pair, with everyone who has to pay attention to their own shortcomings. In the post-competitive preparation period time of training, this is done with emphasis. At this time, the reserve team is motivated mostly to get to the main team. In this way, we motivate all athletes to improve their performance. Yeah, that's all.
Very good. So I have a short question for Ukraine. So you have a big team, like you said. Now you have, and it's you are well known, let's say, in our para-rowing group. And are you facing the same gender problem mostly with the PR3 category, or also with the PR1 and PR2 category?
Well, it's a question of not a boat class. It's more a question of involving new athletes and keep them trying and keep them as a candidates to the team. And it's a general problem that there is a less female athletes also interested to come to the para-rowing sport. So it's more like common idea. It's not generally in COX4 or compare to double sculls? It's a more general question because it's easier actually to have a like a 2 reserve rowers, male rowers, than to find one good female rower as a reserve. Because when someone is out, so it becomes a problem.
Yeah, so it looks like every country has the same problem. We need to brainstorm something to have more women involved in para rowing. Let's hope for the future to have to achieve this goal. So thank you for your contribution, for sharing with us your experience, and I wish you all the best for next year. Thank you.
Hola.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I one extra consideration about your last question? Maybe for another country is interesting. We have to make 2 different actions. One, in the national team, we tried to make, when the calendar give us the possibility to make the same training camp of the national team, the senior team, with the para rowing team, and in the same, we stay together in the same hotel and use the same bus to go and return, all the same. Because we try to think to have much better integration in both teams. And something similar in the clubs. When we made the training camps, in the first point, we made in a national training center, and then we tried to modify and made the training camp, the different training camp, high performance or the beginner camps in the clubs, because in this possibility, the rest of the boathouse, the girls and the boys in the boathouse stay together with our para rowers. Include in the cases of in this club don't have a para rower, we try to go because it's a possibility to development, because one of these girls or boys see the people with visual impairment or with a wheelchair and say, I have a friend, or it's a real possibility to development, and we try to do these 2 actions in the future.
Good. That's a good idea. Very good. And it's a good integration between able-bodied rowers and para rowers anyway.
Yes, we feel that after that, in the boathouse, it's a different climate. They change the attitude is always positive. It's much better. After this camp, it's much better.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I hope to see you very soon next year with the COVID away from us. And thank you again. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ciao. Bye.
On behalf of the Para Rowing Commission, I would like to thank Simon, Esteban, Oleksandr, and Sergey for their contribution to the World Rowing 2020 Virtual Coaches Conference. I would like to remind you all that today's speaker will also take part in a live question and answer section on Saturday, 5th of December. The section for today's presentation will start at 17:40 Central European Time. Please put your question into the Zoom chat at the time of the live section, and we will try to get as many questions answered as possible. Thank you to all of you for joining the conference.